responsibilities ever in this family. I was there, I was always there, and I gave 110% every time. I felt like I wasn't getting that from the rest of my family. I got 3 ex-wives who are going, Kody changed, Kody changed, Kody changed. All right, I guess we all went through menopause together, because there is such thing as male menopause, and my testosterone probably fell to the floor, and I just didn't want to do the hard work anymore.
Hey besties. So, Kody and Robyn finally closed on Coyote Pass, and of course they decided to celebrate with a little gathering at their house. During the party, Kody put on a whole performance, complete with crocodile tears, about how broken his relationships are with his kids. And right beside him was Robyn, feeding him this narrative that everything happening with his children is entirely the ex-wife's fault, that Christine and Janelle supposedly planted ideas in their adult kids' heads. Yep, according to Robyn, that's the big reason the kids don't like Kody or her. One of you left an incredibly sharp comment the other day that really stuck with me. You pointed out how, on Special Forces, Kody actually took accountability and admitted that he was to blame for the breakdown in his family relationships. He even said that as the head of the family, the responsibility ultimately falls on him, especially when it comes to his children. But then, as you said, he went home to Robyn. And honestly, what do you want to bet that the minute he walked through the door, Robyn flipped the script and convinced him that none of it was his fault? Instead, she probably told him the kids were the real problem because she personally has issues with them. And the more I watched this episode, the more obvious it became. No one enables Kody or fuels his "it's never my fault" delusions like Robyn does. She is his #1 validator, and this episode was proof that a lot of these strange ideas he's suddenly spouting seem to be coming straight from her. Robyn has this habit of unintentionally exposing herself. She tells on herself without even realizing it. If you haven't been following Robyn, or you're newer to the Sister Wives mess, let me reintroduce you. And if you have been watching, you know exactly what I'm about to say. This is textbook Robyn. With a completely straight face, Robyn tells Kody and the cameras that adults going through a divorce can influence their kids by telling them stories that turn them against their parent. And she says this like she's making some deep revelation. But Robyn should know exactly how this works, because it's literally what she did with her own children when it came to her ex-husband, Preston Jessup. Preston, who lives in Montana, was portrayed by Robyn as this abusive man who didn't pay child support and supposedly never cared to see his kids. Meanwhile, she's now married to Robyn Brown, a man who also hasn't paid child support for most of his children, didn't see them for years, had to be dragged into court before he'd pay for Truly, and never provided insurance for Christine or Janelle's kids. Nothing. Yet Robyn's kids, oh, they get insurance through Kody. They get full financial support. They get everything. So apparently, in Robyn's world, it's unforgivable for her ex-husband not to see the kids or pay child support, even when she was blocking access and feeding the kids negative ideas about him. But when Kody neglects his children and fails to provide for them, that's somehow fine. That's somehow excusable. And when she and Kody were planting ideas in her kids' minds about their dad being abusive, despite having zero evidence, that was justified. Let's be very clear. There were no court records, no police reports, no allegations of abuse filed. Nothing. If there had been any legitimate accusations of domestic violence or child abuse, court would have been the perfect and necessary place to bring them forward. She never did. The court never found anything. The only thing documented was her ex-husband accusing her of being manipulative, saying she was poisoning the children against him and brainwashing them. And yet now here's Robyn, looking Kody in the eye and telling him that his ex-wives are the ones doing that to him, that they're manipulating the kids into turning against their father. It's absolutely wild. She keeps saying things like, there are hurt feelings, misunderstandings, and some heavy influencing happening. Then, she goes into this emotional plea about how important it is for Kody to have a relationship with his kids, and for the kids to have a relationship with him and with her. And then she adds that parents have no idea how much the little things they say influence their kids' feelings about the other parent. What we're seeing here is triangulation happening in real time. Robyn is actively creating a narrative where there is someone, an enemy, blocking Kody's relationship with his children. And that enemy, according to her, is Christine and Janelle. She frames the ex-wives as the perpetrators, Kody and the kids as the victims, and herself as some kind of mediator. She's telling Kody that the kids aren't forming their own opinions based on their lived experiences. No, according to her, the kids are incapable of thinking for themselves. Everything they feel is just what their moms told them to feel. And while she's feeding him all this, she's playing with her hair, speaking slowly, and pretending like all these thoughts are actually his. She's doing that passive manipulation thing where it seems supportive, but it's actually steering him. This whole conversation even happens after Kody says, "Maybe I need to get into therapy and learn tools to communicate with my kids." And what does Robyn do? She immediately shifts it back to, "The real issue is your ex-wives influencing the children. It's their fault." In other words, Kody doesn't need to take responsibility. Kody doesn't need to change. Kody doesn't need therapy. It's all the wives' fault. She positions the kids as victims of Christine and Janelle, while removing every ounce of responsibility from Kody. She fully enables his worst behaviors because, and this is my opinion, she doesn't actually want him to repair those relationships. Because if Kody took responsibility, he might grow, he might reconnect with his children, and that might threaten the little emotional kingdom she's built around him. Which brings us to the big reveal about Kody's so-called apologies. They aren't about healing anything. They're about image management. They're about Kody wanting people to stop criticizing him. It's about him wanting the negativity surrounding him to go away. Not about caring. Not about fixing the damage. And Robyn only feeds this by saying the real problem isn't anything Kody did, the problem is that the moms told the kids not to like him. Then Kody starts in with, "In plural marriage, the dad isn't around as much as the mom. I'm tired of being blamed. It's not my fault how they feel." He claims he's reached out to every child multiple times. And if they don't respond, it's because they aren't reciprocating. And then he says the line that sums up his entire delusional mindset. No matter what anyone says, there will always be a Kody-sized hole in their hearts. So the story Robyn keeps feeding Kody is that none of this is actually his fault. She claims the kids are simply victims of their moms supposedly speaking negatively about him, and that Christine and Janelle are the ones influencing their feelings. According to her, polygamy itself is to blame for Kody's broken relationships, not Kody ignoring calls, not Kody disappearing from their lives, not Kody's own behavior. She completely skips over the fact that it took years and years of hurt, neglect, and unresolved conflict for these adult kids to reach a point where they didn't want to communicate with him anymore. No one just wakes up one morning and decides to go no contact. That's something you do only after endless cycles of disappointment, after a parent repeatedly refuses to take accountability, or when the emotional damage and manipulation become so overwhelming that the only way to protect yourself is to step back completely from the narcissist in your life. Even Michael T. has openly admitted that she keeps her distance from Robyn because she never knows when Robyn might twist things or manipulate her again. That says everything. And to show just how deeply Kody absorbs Robyn's talking points, let me highlight what he recently told Fox 5 in New York when they asked about the divorces. He said that when the marriages ended, the kids automatically became victims of the divorce, and that because polygamy supposedly makes children closer to their mothers, it was natural for them to drift away from him. He said it hurt him that they chose sides, and then he insisted that his own toxic behavior only came afterward because he was under pressure and everything was being judged on camera. So now that he's home, and now that he's had plenty of Robyn's influence in his ear, Kody is suddenly back to claiming none of it is his responsibility. He says he only accepted the blame on special forces because it was a high-pressure, military-style environment, and he just said what they wanted to hear. Now he insists the problem is really a two-way street. He frames the kids as victims of divorce, blames polygamy for distancing them from him, and minimizes his own behavior by chalking it up to the family being on TV and people nitpicking every little thing. This is textbook proof of how deeply her influence shapes his thinking, what he calls transmuting his thoughts. Robyn plants the idea, he absorbs it, and suddenly it becomes his reality. And every narcissist needs one thing to survive, an enabler. Someone who constantly reassures them that their version of events is correct. Someone who makes excuses for them. Someone who props up that fragile ego and tells them they're justified in their anger. And that's exactly what Robyn does. She tells Kody exactly what he wants to hear, that none of this is his fault, that the kids were turned against him, and that he is the wounded party. Taking responsibility would shatter his ego. Blaming everyone else allows him to stay angry, stay self-righteous, and avoid growth. That's the cycle Robyn keeps reinforcing. Her manipulation has always been there. Viewers just didn't see it, because for years, cameras rarely showed her private conversations with Kody. She spoke carefully, stayed off-screen whenever possible, and let the other wives take the heat publicly. But now that she's being forced to show more of her conversations with Kody, we are seeing her tactics unfold in real time. And then she adds this dramatic line about how it hasn't just been one divorce, it's been 3. And that all 3 women leaving him has been such an enormous blow to his self-esteem that he's practically a miracle for still functioning. She actually says this. She positions him as the victim of these divorces, claiming all this emotional devastation was dumped on him, completely erasing the years he neglected these women, ignored their needs, drained their finances, and emotionally manipulated them. She turns him into the poor, wounded man who was hurt by the very women he mistreated. I mentioned earlier that Kody blamed his so-called male menopause, saying his testosterone dropped and therefore he supposedly stopped caring. Which makes absolutely no sense. Yes, testosterone does naturally drop with age, but that doesn't explain abandoning your wife emotionally. That doesn't explain choosing one household over the others. That doesn't explain controlling behavior, financial manipulation, or blatant favoritism. He flip-flops constantly. It's not my fault. Well, maybe it is. I'm not sure. I don't know. It's probably polygamy. It's probably Christine. It's probably Janelle. And Robyn always swoops in with reassurance. According to her, it's astonishing he even survived what these women put him through. As if they wronged him by walking away after years of mistreatment. As if their independence is somehow cruelty toward him. She paints them as the villains who hurt him by leaving him, even though they did so to save themselves from the mess he and Robyn created. Then Kody quotes some line from an Italian book about how the pain inflicted by a father always stays in the hearts of his children. He's right about that, but he refuses to see that he is the father who caused that pain. And Robyn is right there, ready to twist even that into a narrative where he's the victim instead of the one accountable. She will always find a way to deflect responsibility away from him. Always. But here's the thing. When you're talking about this whole experience, and you admit you have regrets, being able to process those regrets with your kids would actually help you grow. Whenever I watch Kody fall apart because his kids don't want a relationship with him, I also see a piece of Robyn in that moment. She jumps right into her own abandonment story, saying she pushed away her biological father for years out of anger, but deep down needed him and still wishes she had him in her life. So now both Robyn and Kody have their own daddy wounds. Kody starts crying about never repairing things with his father, and then Robyn immediately joins in, crying about hers. She claims seeing his kids push him away reminds her of how she rejects her dad and how badly she wishes she still had a relationship with him. She goes on about looking like her dad and missing him, wanting him in her life. But here's what makes that whole narrative fall apart. Robyn's father is still alive. Alive, living in Montana. If she really wanted a relationship, she could literally pick up the phone. I'm sure he'd answer. But she doesn't reach out. Why? Because she doesn't want that relationship. She's created that boundary, and that's perfectly fine. Sometimes you decide you don't want contact with a parent. I've done it. And yes, it hurts, but it's still your boundary. And you honor it. Kody's kids aren't rejecting him. He rejected them years before. He pulled away from them long before they pulled away from him. He didn't show up for their lives. He didn't put in the effort, and he emotionally abandoned them. He isn't the victim of being pushed out. He's the victim of his own neglect and the consequences of his actions. And I cannot deal with how Robyn constantly shields him, painting the kids as if they're committing some mortal sin simply because they don't want to sit in his presence after years of being ignored. This whole situation has been unbelievably complicated and confusing for them. And then Kody finally acknowledges that he said a lot of hurtful things about their mothers, something that definitely made things worse. He even admits it wasn't a road he should have ever gone down. But right after that moment of honesty, Robyn swoops in with more justification. She claims she has no voice with Janelle, Mary, or Christine, but she does have influence with Kody. So she tells him he needs to find himself again, because she believes he's lost the good man she married. Robyn is constantly offering Kody excuses, layer after layer of empathy, to soften the reality of what he's done to everybody around him. Because if she ever admitted the truth, she'd also have to admit she helped him, encouraged him, manipulated situations, and strengthened his worst behaviors. Kody acts on whatever he wants regardless. Yes, he's creepy, he's bizarre, and he behaves horribly, but Robyn feeds it. She gives him the validation he craves, and then hands him an escape hatch by saying it's never actually his fault. And honestly, I keep thinking about what it would feel like to be with a man who has children with other women but refuses to have a relationship with them. A man who doesn't financially support those kids. A man who shows zero effort in repairing those relationships. Because if he can do that to them, what makes Robyn think he wouldn't eventually do that to her kids? When a man openly tears down his exes, mocks them, belittles them, and shows cruelty, he will do that to whoever he's with next. That behavior doesn't stay compartmentalized. And whatever Robyn is doing now to convince him he's innocent is absurd. Maybe this is her way of coping. Maybe this is how she justifies staying with him. And honestly, that might explain why she completely unravels at the tell-all, crying and ranting about not supporting everything he does, trying desperately to prove she's not blindly loyal. Because to stay with a man like this, you do have to lie to yourself. A lot. You have to tell yourself whole fairy tales to tolerate a partner who sleeps with other women while married to you. A partner who fathers children with other women while legally tied to you. Or in Robyn's case, continues sleeping with other women during their marriage. You have to tell yourself stories to justify a husband who spreads his finances thin between multiple households. And then, when it all falls apart and those women leave him, Robyn somehow rewrites it into a narrative where the victims are the villains. She blames Christine. She blames Janelle. She blames Mary. She blames anyone but the man who caused the damage. She is delusional. And sure, Christine and Janelle aren't perfect. No one in this family is. But I do not see either one of them brainwashing their kids or dictating how they should feel. Those kids are grown. They have their own minds. They watch these situations unfold with their own eyes. They reach their conclusions based on their lived experiences, not their mother's commentary. They saw how he treated their moms. They saw how he treated them. They endured their own version of neglect, distance, and emotional abuse. Robyn doesn't get to erase their reality. She doesn't get to tell Kody it wasn't his fault. She doesn't get to rewrite their pain. And she definitely doesn't have the right to speak for the kids or blame the other women when those kids have every right to feel exactly the way they do. Christine and Janelle didn't influence anything. This is on Kody. Robyn just refuses to admit it. So here we are. Robyn blames the women, excuses Kody, and sinks deeper into delusion right alongside him. Tell me what you think in the comments. Make sure to like this video, hit subscribe if you haven't already, and tap the bell so you never miss a new upload. Thanks for watching, besties. Bye.